It's been 2.5 years since I've been back to the States, a long time away. So I came for Christmas. This is my home on beautiful Lake Jesup in Central Florida. My plan was to make a video about my son's 1998 Suzuki 1400 Intruder as soon as I got back. But COVID. I got it January 4th. It must have been the new Omicron version because I wasn't very sick and it only lasted 4 or 5 days. But today, finally, I'm going to compare the Intruder to the Colove. Completely subjective. Simply put, what's the difference in the ride between a cruiser and an adventure motorcycle? Just my opinion. Cue the intro. There are literally scores of videos out there on the Suzuki 1400 Intruder, describing every facet of the bike, the history, specs, sound, customization, technical information, and on and on. So what is the purpose of my video? Simple. I just want to compare the two very different styles of bikes. The Suzuki Boulevard is a cruiser, the Colove 500X is an adventure bike. They look very different, but I want to talk about the riding experience on each. Very subjective, just my impressions of how the bikes compare. I'll start with the Suzuki and with the styling. Suzuki started marketing a 750cc Intruder in the mid-80s because Harley-Davidson had lobbied Congress for protection from Japanese big bike competition. 750 cc's was below the tariff threshold, making it a bargain, so the bike sold well. Also, because of its chopper-esque look that was getting more and more popular. I want to draw your attention to that front wheel. Its angle is significantly greater than an adventure bike, and it definitely affects its handling characteristics. That angle is called rake and trail, and as soon as you mount the Intruder, you know there is something very different about its steering compared to, say, my Colove 500X. And further compounding the geometry-induced problems, the handlebars, being more narrow, make the bike turn very difficult at low speeds. The handlebars simply don't have the leverage that the wider bars on the Colove have. But there's a reason this is not a thing, not a big deal. Cruisers were made to cruise. This thing is at home on the interstate or two-lane highways, tooling along at 5 or 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. That's cruising. It's what this motorcycle was built for, and to my very inexperienced perceptions, it does it quite well. The bike is very comfortable. The seat, really comfortable. I can ride for more than an hour without being in pain. Those buckhorn handlebars, note their curve, I found the hand position ideal. Very comfortable. It's just a natural position that feels good. It's one of my favorite parts of this bike. But they only work on a cruiser, because most of the time you're not going slow and doing a lot of close quarter turning. So the styling actually focuses or limits the bike to its intended purpose, cruising. Now to the Colove. The seat is definitely not as comfortable. The more upright riding position is better, but also those big wide handlebars, since they have to also be usable standing up, are just not as natural. But the Colove is considerably easier to do close quarter maneuvers on. This is just like comparing a Jeep to a sedan. There's another very different experience riding the Intruder, the sound. The only thing that isn't stock on this bike is the exhaust. Straight pipes on the right, no baffles. It sounds absolutely incredible. It adds an entirely different dimension to riding the Intruder. It sounds like a very powerful motorcycle. I thoroughly enjoy the sound. It's just amazing.
434.
I tried different microphones, options, and positions to see if I could capture it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to do.
The Colove, albeit sounds good, it's just not the same thing. There's just a world of difference. There's another part of the experience that is different. Torque. The Intruder has a big bore, large displacement engine. It doesn't produce a whole lot of horsepower, mid-70s, but it does produce a lot more torque than the Colove. And that translates to power at lower RPMs. It's just a different power band. It feels powerful and it sounds powerful, even though by modern Japanese or Italian standards, it's simply not. But there is one more factor I want to mention regarding the Intruder. It's a negative, and it strikes right at the heart of its identity as a cruiser, and that is vibration. The Intruder is a V-twin. It's a copy of a Harley. It's got that same sound that we just talked about, and I love the sound. But coming with that sound is vibration. I just spoke to a friend of mine who owns an Electroglide, and he said because of all the rubber mounting and damping on his Harley, there is no vibration. He said his is as smooth as glass. That is a big deal for cruising. In long rides, vibration is extremely fatiguing. Think of a vibrator. You can only stand it for a few minutes and you're done. With my Intruder, the vibration is so pronounced, it makes your head, your brain vibrate. And now that I think of it, it's my biggest criticism of this motorcycle. What's horrible is when you're just learning to ride, it's kind of unnerving, unsettling because it disorients you. When you're learning, you're hyper-focused, concentrating on your senses, especially balance at my age, and it makes me more unsure of myself. But then, when you get used to it, it becomes no big deal. And that just requires some time in the saddle.
It's kind of like a no-brainer. You're on this motorcycle, you obviously don't have a brain anyway. All I know is I'd like to sell cardboard boxes to Amazon. That's all I know.
But what about the Colove? The truth is, it vibrates as well. In my earlier videos, you have heard me say, this thing is vibey. In fact, the vibrations damaged my iPhone 11's camera stabilization chip, and the camera had to be replaced. But the vibration is different. It's a higher frequency that is felt in my feet and hands, but not in my head like the Intruder. It's not disorienting at all, and it's not fatiguing except in my hands and feet that kind of buzzes a bit after a long ride. What does this all mean? The Suzuki is a blast to ride. The sound is the big difference. And it's a great cruiser, but not for cross-country riding. Local touring, day trips, super. But hours and hours in the saddle, no way. The Colove is better, but there are much better over-the-road motorcycles out there. Thanks for watching. Please smash that like button and subscribe if you want more.
Okay, I'm switching to Benny's Benda, And I've been meaning to do a review of this thing for a long time. And so let's do it.